You're listening to the Business Tea podcast, where we talk honestly about what it really takes to start and grow a business.
We share practical marketing advice and real conversations that people don't often talk about, shaped by hands-on experience in agencies, growing businesses, and global brands.
We're Sarah
And Ross.
A brother and sister duo.
And whether you have a small or growing business,
You're building something of your own,
or you're just interested in how marketing actually works,
keep on listening. In the first episode, we touched on how marketing can feel a little bit overwhelming. So in today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about why marketing can feel overwhelming, where it comes from, and why it's not a personal failure if you do feel that way. Because I think a lot of people probably can resonate with that feeling.
And it's not about like adding to people's plates. I guess the point of this episode, like you say, is to kind of recognize the fact that it's completely normal and justified to feel that way.
I think with the amount of people that we've spoken to about this sort of thing as well, we've recognized that it is an incredibly common feeling, but something that is probably rarely spoken about honestly.
Yeah.
Because I think people will be able to resonate with it, but maybe not find a conversation that is directly about it. So hopefully this episode will answer to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess to kick off this episode, obviously, in the last episode, we spoke about the overwhelming feeling, and that is the point of this conversation. But in a short synopsis, why do you think marketing feels so overwhelming?
I think it kind of leads on from that last episode in terms of with how accessible information is. Platforms have almost exploded with advice, and then there's multiple different platforms, so you've almost got information overload, and it's trying to decipher, like we said before, what's useful, what's not, what's reliable, what's not, what's worth implementing in my own business, what's not. And almost, I know I get this, but decision paralysis, like you've got that many options, it's knowing where to start. I think also with platforms, algorithms can be quite overwhelming because each platform has a different algorithm, and those algorithms within each platform change all the time. And as a small business owner who's trying to juggle a lot of different things and wear all the hats, it's having the time to try and keep on top of those algorithms or the trends that are worth jumping on, if there are any at the time. But yeah, I guess trying to keep on top of those changes and knowing what those changes even are.
Yeah, literally. And it's hard to keep up with it because, like you say, like algorithm changes can happen monthly. So it's like, you know, unless you're looking on the direct sources for those platforms, you're never going to kind of keep up to speed with it. And I guess as a business, we want to help people do that. But going back to your point about each platform having their own tools and, algorithms, a lot of those platforms also have like their own dashboards. And I know that for me, I love data. I have a love-hate relationship with data, if I'm very honest, but I'm naturally good at data. And I feel that I quite enjoy seeing this sea of data and being able to jump in and take out what I need. But I don't think people have that skill.
I'm definitely like the other end of the scale, because whilst I know that there's a lot of data there and I understand how incredibly useful it is, to your point, the number of different places that I need to go to get data that is useful, then sit and decipher it or go through it and then try and decipher what I'm seeing from it, then implementing it, is overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think I know we'll get into it in a different episode, but I've obviously done a lot of work with like AI and automation and like how to streamline that process. But I feel like if someone right now is listening to this thinking like, oh my God, yeah, I feel that, like I am overwhelmed by so much data, like the bit of advice I'd give at this stage before we go into the kind of more detailed topic is just to try and like streamline what it is you actually need and try and not to get overwhelmed by the fact that there is so much data there. Because a lot of the time you just need a couple of bits to help reinforce what you're doing currently rather than seeing everything.
Yeah, you've just said something else as well that is, in answer to your original question, overwhelming, but the amount of new things that are coming out. So you touched on AI there. I think that's another thing, because the way that technology is going these days, there's always something new to keep on top of or to consider within your strategy or your marketing activity. And it's kind of add into that list of things to consider or do or look into.
Yeah. I think as well, another thing, just to add to your points of...
We'll get all the list out of the way up
Literally,
front.
it occurred to me as you were saying about like AI, there's so many people out there that are putting out content. I know we touched on this in the last episode, but it's almost like this like wall of noise. Like so many people have an opinion or a best practice or something that they've done that's worked that they then share online. And I feel like that also adds to the whole why marketing's so confusing.
Yeah, you've got advice coming from a lot of different places, but I found from my algorithm what I see, I don't know if it's the same for you, but the people that tend to be given advice are giving it from their own specialism.
Yeah.
And so you might have somebody that is giving out advice specifically around social media or specifically around AI or specifically around email marketing. And so because they're all giving advice in their own areas of specialism, that I think would add to the overwhelm in terms of it's giving you more sources of knowledge. But again, it's hard to filter out what is most impactful to an individual or an individual business. I think a lot of that sort of content is as well quite focused or quite targeted towards creators, especially the social media stuff or influencers, as opposed to somebody that's setting up a small business. And I think that's where we've been quite lucky in our experience and our roles that we've worked in either a lot of different specialisms, so we've built up that knowledge within each of the different areas, or in generalist marketing roles. So we've had that more holistic view, and we know where each of those specialisms might fit into a broader strategy. But without that sort of experience or knowledge, you won't have that holistic view to be able to kind of decipher what is worth focusing on.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying about us having the experience in different like specialisms almost, but we've also had that at different business stages and different industries, and all of those things change how the game works almost, because like you said, all the advice is targeted a lot of the time towards like creator accounts and influencers, but then like what can you take from that for a hairdresser or a, you know, someone that's got e-com products? Like it's about, I guess, understanding from that noise perspective what is relevant.
Yeah, every business is different, and so are the preferences of the person that's working within it or running it. And so it's putting that lens over, okay, what can I take from this that is, one, going to be useful, but also two, that I'm going to be able to give it the best shot at and enjoy doing it in the process.
Yeah.
Something else that I was thinking about as you were talking then is, like you say, we've worked in businesses that are at different stages. And I think sometimes you can think that the grass is greener in a different business that's at a different stage. But I suppose we've seen, having done that and worked in different types and stages of businesses, there's overwhelm in every single one of them.
Absolutely.
And it might be the same sort of thing, but just presenting itself differently.
Yeah.
So, for example, say budgets, it might be that a small business might have no budget. So there's overwhelm there in terms of, what do I do with no money? And what my time is so valuable right now. What's it worth spending time on? But at the other end of the scale, you could have a huge budget, but feel overwhelmed there because it's, I've got all this budget. Where do I focus it? And it's still valuable, and I want to have ROI from whatever I do. But where do I put that? Where's the best place to put that budget?
Yeah, to your point about the kind of issues at both end of the spectrum type thing for both businesses with budgets and without, I do feel like content nowadays, as we all know, is like geared towards like this glossy, highlighted version of real life, and you don't get the true story through that.
Yeah, I think lifestyle content or lifestyle influencers, say, are actually getting better at showing more of like the real life behind the scenes type stuff. But I think maybe in the business world, that's where we're kind of needing to catch up a little bit, because I think, especially as a small business owner looking at brand content, it's easy to compare maybe in terms of the quality of the content that they're putting out or the editing skills. But actually, what you don't see is that behind the scenes reality, there may be a huge budget, like we say, and so they might have outsourced that piece of work, or there might be a huge team that's worked on it where they've got a videographer, an editor, a copywriter for the script. And as a one-man band or a small business that's looking at that, comparing to it, it could add to that overwhelm, because it's like, well, I want to be doing that and I should be doing that if I want to have a space in this market as well. But it's not realistic to compare to that sort of business at that stage.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important for small businesses especially, and growing businesses, to kind of park that. It's great to draw inspiration. It's great to kind of like compare yourself in a healthy way, to say, I want to get to that point. But really, the only competition that you've got as a business that is growing is yourself.
Yeah.
You should be asking yourself, like, what did I do last month? Have I topped that? What was my output? Have I done more? Or it's not even about like doing more output even. It's like, even just the feeling, like if you're progressing in a certain way, that should be marked, not like against someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm guilty of doing that, because you can put pressure on yourself to do more or to have content that's more like somebody else. But like you say, if you're looking back at what you're putting out right now compared to what you put out when you put your first piece of content out, there naturally will be progression there, because you're learning from it, and hopefully we'll be putting those learnings into the content that you're putting out or whatever it is that you're working on. So it is more valuable to look at yourself and only compare to, we say it in even outside of business, only compare yourself to yourself, because it's more accurate.
Yeah, and I think we've had to learn that the hard way a little bit, because like obviously we've both grown in careers, and like we've, like you said, worked in agencies, big businesses, etc. And now we're stepping into that space of doing everything ourselves and not having big budgets and not having a team of people around us. And I feel like we've had to readjust quite quickly, and we've had really like frank conversations of like, we need to cut all this stuff. Like, that would be great if we had time, if we had budget. So I feel like we've actually recently gone through that, so it puts us in a really good position to like have those conversations and help people also prioritize what they need to do if they've got no budget or if they've got no time. So I feel like these conversations are going to be really helpful for anyone that's listening and trying to grow their brand.
With comparison as well, there's a lot of content that I've seen that almost implies that somebody's had an overnight success or a video that's gone viral, and then they're giving advice about how to go viral. But I think it's important to flag that whilst that might have gone viral, which is great, and you never know when that might happen, what you don't see from those types of videos or content, that type of content, is the work behind it that might have actually helped to get to that point.
Yeah, and I do think, like you said, you don't see that and you don't like appreciate that. And I think that's also feeding into that overwhelming feeling, because people think, oh, they've just got really lucky, or like, it's just paid off for them finally. And I think it just adds to the pressure, that the fact that people see that happening to other people, they think that that's just happening, and they need to just like knuckle down and crack on, and like it makes you feel that pressure more when you see those success stories,
and that they should be seeing that as well, or that should happen to them as well. And that's another, like, the should in marketing is another thing that gets to me, because, and I've experienced it in the world of work, where maybe non-marketers more so have those questions of, should we be on TikTok? Should we be on Instagram? Should we be putting video content out? Should we this? Should we that? Whatever it is, that those are quite content specific, but should we be printing posters? Should we be putting flyers out as well? Like, all of those things, and we did mention about opinions in the last episode, but you can have those thoughts yourself. And I think with marketing, there's that many tactical things that you could do without having that overarching, where am I headed goal or objective. That can be quite overwhelming, because it's all of the different choices that you have available to yourself and all of the should be opinions. So if you could summarize, where would you say overwhelm actually comes from?
I would say based on our conversation, that it's too many decisions. So of that information that's out there and the influencing opinions of people, there's too many decisions out there, point one. I think of those decisions, you then can't like prioritize what actually matters, like we were saying. And then I feel like without having that kind of underlying plan or strategy, you then can't pin those things to each other. So like you're almost a bit like immobilized because there's all these things happening at the same time. So I feel like that's what adds, again, for me, that feeling of feeling overwhelmed. But I do think that like if you were to, like you said, focus on the strategy and try and actually apply it to your business rather than taking it at face value, that should be alleviated a little bit.
I think people can blame themselves as well for maybe not doing enough, but actually it's not doing enough or having the motivation to do it. It's knowing where to focus and having that clarity to be able to drive yourself forward with conviction, and knowing that what you are doing is worth doing.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's never a motivation thing. Like when we speak to people, they're normally filled like with beans, you know, they absolutely want to do well and they're passionate about it. But I think that also, like you said, adds to that feeling because they are trying to do too much, and often, like you say, it isn't about that.
It's not motivation, it's too many decisions and lack of clarity.
Yeah. I think as well, when you go through that motion of feeling like overwhelmed and frustrated, again, we're lucky because we've got each other, and we've done this multiple times with the business team where we like have to remind each other that we don't need to, as they say in corporate, like boil the ocean. Like we don't need to do too much. Like we just need to stop and like think about it and reflect on it.
Well, we did this recently, remember, in my lounge, and I was feeling overwhelmed because there was that much to do, or that we thought needed doing before we officially launched, that I was like, I don't even know where to start. So we had that session where we went through, right, what is it that we actually need to launch, and what can we park? We can still launch without, and we park and we focus on it after.
Yeah.
Then that helped us to kind of whittle it down so that then we knew, okay, right, today I'm going to focus on this, and work through that list. Then we can launch. That's all that's needed.
Yeah, and it does help because it's like when you think of that big goal of like, right, I want to achieve this massive thing, when you chisel it down and do like we did, where like you chunk it up into like priorities, what's quick, what's going to have the biggest return, like it suddenly becomes really manageable to be able to like actually, like you say, prioritize the tasks and then just work through them.
And I think part of it is giving yourself the permission to actually take that pause, to step back and to do that process, because I think it can kind of feel, or it might feel like it's not productive because you're stopping and you're down toolsing, if that's a saying. But actually it is so productive. So it's taking that pressure off that you need to be doing, and you're not allowed to just take a pause. Yeah,
and I know you're going to probably cringe when I say this, but I always think of this analogy when I think of prioritization. But you know the story of the hare and the tortoise?
Oh, yeah.
I always think of like, is it better to be sprinting and like doing everything that you can and just like trying to churn through it and perhaps the quality isn't the best? Or is it better to just be a bit more considered and intentional and take your time with something and have a better output? And I feel like by pausing, you're actually allowing yourself to take that slower, more thoughtful approach, really.
I was going to say, arguably, I think a little bit of both. But when it comes to decision making and prioritising around the topic of feeling overwhelmed, I think that considered approach is beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that leads us nicely on to what we'll be talking about in the next episode. So we're going to take a little look at what sits underneath the feeling of overwhelm that we've spoken a little bit about today, which is strategy and tactics, and how they kind of work together.
And once you understand them, suddenly everything feels a bit quieter and a bit more manageable.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good place to end this episode. So if you enjoyed what you've been listening to or watching, please give us a like and a follow, drop us a comment, leave us a review. It really does help. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.
And I suppose just to end with a little bit of reassurance, because we've covered quite a bit in this episode already, if you do resonate with anything that we've spoken about, or you feel like marketing or business right now is a little bit heavy, or you are feeling a bit overwhelmed, just take this as your sign that it's not you, you're not doing anything wrong, and you are certainly not alone.
Definitely.
So hopefully we'll see you in the next episode.